In a snowy kingdom, a desperate cry echoes from a grand castle as someone reaches their breaking point. Rowena, the red-haired Grand Duchess, rejects her title, while a worried maid named Hannah begs her to remain calm. Fury consumes Rowena as she declares her refusal to spend another moment bound to a man she despises. Hurt and isolated, Rowena lashes out at Hannah for failing to understand her misery. A sudden, sharp gasp escapes Hannah as Rowena commands her to keep her distance, backing away in distress. Rowena reaches a tragic resolve, deciding she would rather perish than endure a life controlled by others. Resigned to her fate, the red-haired girl plunges into the freezing air. Splat! A violent splash erupts as Rowena hits the water, leaving Hannah screaming in absolute horror. As she sinks into the depths, Rowena hears Hannah's voice crying out in disbelief at her final act. A dark-haired young man gazes into the water, his heart heavy with the realization of her intense hatred. Sorrow etched on his face, he mourns the tragic length she went to escape their life together. Sinking into the blue abyss, a new consciousness recalls the lonely truth of her former life. She was adopted. Memories of a warm family flicker, revealing the girl's belief that her adoptive parents were truly kind. Crack! The illusion of love shatters as the birth of a biological daughter turns her into an outsider. To escape her loneliness, she buried herself in the tragic novel Please Embrace Me, finding kinship in the suffering hero. While walking and reading her favorite story, she remains blissfully unaware of the danger approaching on the city streets. Boom! Blinding lights and a sudden impact cut her previous life short in an instant. Gluck! She plunges into a mystical sea, her reflection merging with the image of the red-haired Rowena. She awakens as Rowena Hadelris, marveling at the pomegranate hair and rare blue eyes she only read about. Standing as the novel's doomed character, the girl realizes she has fully inhabited Rowena's elegant body. Memories of Rowena's constant bickering with the young Arkid flash before her eyes. She recalls the character's tragic end, visualizing the grief her sudden death would cause those left behind. Phew! Rowena sighs with relief, having no lingering attachment to her cold, former existence. Embracing her second chance, she finds herself oddly grateful for this unexpected reincarnation. Excited by the possibilities, she vows to spend her new life as the ultimate fan of her favorite lead. Twirl! She dances through her room, celebrating her decision to live happily while supporting the one she admires. The joy fades as Rowena notices the biting chill in her room, despite her warm pajamas. Hannah continues her vigil, while Rowena contemplates the strange timeline, knowing her character's death shouldn't have occurred so early in the narrative. Bang! A violent noise erupts nearby, startling Rowena and shattering the quiet of the morning. Whoosh! Rowena turns toward the source of the commotion, her alarm growing as she wonders what happened. Thump! She races down the hallway, her heart pounding as she calls out for Arkid in a panic. Bursting through the door, Rowena discovers a blood-spattered room where a tall man looms over a wounded Arkid. Arkid winces in pain, pressing a cloth to the bloody gash on his forehead while staring blankly ahead. Rowena's temper flares as she demands to know who dared to harm Arkid's face. Baron Lork adjusts his glasses, coldly dismissing her intrusion into his scheduled lesson. Standing her ground, Rowena explains that the disturbing sounds from within forced her to investigate. The Baron waves his hand dismissively, labeling the boy's injury as a minor accident during necessary discipline. He spins a blatant lie, claiming the young Grand Duke simply tripped while resisting his punishment. Rowena confronts Baron Lork, her eyes narrowing as she questions the logic of his transparent excuses. Smirking, the Baron challenges her to ask the boy himself, confident in his power over the cowering child. Arkid remains silent, his dark eyes filled with a mixture of resentment and resignation as he endures the humiliation. Rowena erupts in anger, declaring that his actions are not discipline, but blatant, inexcusable abuse. A tense standoff ensues as the Baron threatens her, but Rowena meets his gaze with fierce, unwavering defiance. Narration reveals that the Baron's arrogance stems from the Grand Duke's unwavering favoritism toward his lover's family. Clink! The Baron toasts to his status, completely unaware that his influence is built on a crumbling foundation. Rowena scoffs internally, knowing that, according to the novel's plot, this man's downfall is only a month away. She turns the threat back on him, mocking his incompetence and predicting his eventual regret. Baron Lork sneers at her lack of decorum, doubling down on his claim that Archid brought the injury upon himself. Rowena's jaw drops in disbelief as the Baron continues to justify his cruelty with more ridiculous lies. Rowena celebrates her chance to inhabit the body of her favorite character's wife, determined to prevent their divorce. Archid is baffled by her sudden change of heart, reminding her that she demanded a divorce every single day. Desperate to fix her reputation, Rowena promises she won't make things difficult for him any longer. Archid remains unconvinced, his eyes filled with a lingering sadness and deep-seated distrust of her intentions.
Realizing he doesn't believe her, Rowena decides she needs a more convincing story to win him over.
Rowena feigns vulnerability, lying that she didn't try to drown, but simply lost her footing and slipped. Bubbles rise as Rowena recalls the genuine terror of sinking into the dark, freezing depths of the lake. Rowena bows deeply to thank Archid for saving her life, but he dismisses it as his simple duty. Archid explains his resolve, noting that despite the freezing water, he couldn't hesitate when her life was at stake. Archid asks if the near-death experience changed her mind about leaving, and Rowena confirms that it did. Rowena views Archid as a wary little kitten that she must carefully approach one slow step at a time. Archid offers her one final chance to leave, warning of future regrets, but Rowena firmly refuses to go. Surrounded by a floral aura, Rowena beams a radiant, joyful smile at the prospect of their new beginning. Rowena impulsively grabs Archid's hands, startling him with her sudden and uncharacteristic display of warm affection. Her eyes sparkle with a new light, reflecting her excitement and determination to become Archid's most devoted supporter. Rowena enthusiastically shakes his hands, declaring there is no backing out of their commitment now. Later, Rowena wonders if her character's original death truly traumatized Archid more than she initially realized. She recalls how Archid rushed to save her, while a panicked Hannah screamed for help by the snowy castle. Soaking in a rose-filled bath, Rowena muses on Archid's deep sense of responsibility toward even a wicked wife. Rowena feels a renewed sense of purpose, believing she was given this life specifically to help Archid succeed. She calculates that 7 years is enough time to secure his position, despite the hatred of her in-laws. A maid helps Rowena dry off as she contemplates the difficult path ahead with her hostile family members. Rowena categorizes her troublesome relatives, including a pushover husband and narcissistic, unstable in-laws with severe personality disorders. A maid interrupts her thoughts to announce that the madam is looking for her, forcing Rowena into action. A sudden shock jolts Rowena as she realizes the terrifying mother-in-law is summoning her for a meeting already. Rowena walks through the grand, sunlit estate, Her destination, the room where the formidable Grand Duchess awaits. Entering the room, Rowena politely asks the blonde woman sitting by the window if she was called. The blonde Grand Duchess sits with poise, her red eyes sharp as she elegantly sips her morning tea. Rowena realizes she should have addressed her mother-in-law more formally, but decides to stick with her current approach. Rowena offers a charming, innocent smile, asking for permission to get closer to the imposing blonde woman. The blonde woman offers a small smile in return, leaving Rowena feeling momentarily speechless and slightly uneasy. Rowena asks for the reason behind the summons, but the Grand Duchess calmly tells her to sit first. The Grand Duchess mentions hearing rumors about Lady Lork being dragged out of the study in tears. Her gaze intensifies as she demands to know the truth of what happened during the confrontation with the Baron. Rowena maintains her composure and sits across from her, insisting that nothing of importance actually occurred. The blonde woman looms with a dark, threatening aura, her suspicion growing despite Rowena's casual dismissal. Rowena suggests that the Grand Duke simply warned Lady Lork never to return, leading to her tearful exit. Narration reveals Lady Lork was once a cherished mistress who never expected to be discarded so abruptly. Flashbacks show a woman in purple weeping as a man turns his back, leaving a trail of broken promises. The Grand Duchess wonders if Lady Lork's hurt pride is the reason she failed to appear today. Rowena watches her mother-in-law, sensing the older woman's lingering attachments and complex feelings toward the recent drama. The blonde woman sighs, knowing that a woman like Lady Lork will likely not accept this defeat quietly. Rowena confidently assures her mother-in-law that the Grand Duke will never seek out Lady Lork ever again. Ha! Rowena makes a funny face to mimic the Duke's narrowed eyes, causing her mother-in-law to laugh. The Grand Duchess smiles, noting that Rowena is probably the only person brave enough to mock the Duke. Rowena is relieved to see the mother-in-law's mood improve, glad to have removed a thorn from her side. The blonde woman reveals that the Grand Duke sent a physician to Arkad's room immediately after the incident. Rowena listens with concern, realizing the Duke took immediate action after witnessing the aftermath of the Baron's discipline. A doctor examines Arkad's bruised arm while the Duke watches silently, the full extent of the abuse revealed. The Grand Duchess demands to know why Rowena is silent, while Rowena hides her thoughts about the Baron. Rowena mentions a physician examined her for any lingering aftereffects from her terrifying fall into the water. The blonde Grand Duchess shocks Rowena by bluntly asking if the couple has ever shared a bed. Feeling flustered by the intimate question, Rowena considers her answer while surrounded by a soft pink floral frame. Sitting across the grand table, the Grand Duchess coolly demands to know what Rowena is trying to say. With a determined expression, Rowena enthusiastically declares her intention to finally fulfill her role as Arkad's wife. Skeptical of this sudden change, the mother-in-law questions her sincerity, which Rowena playfully confirms with an affectionate title. Knock knock. A sudden interruption halts their conversation, just as the Grand Duchess asks if Rowena even understands her role. The heavy doors open to reveal Arkad standing tall in formal attire, his arrival signaling a shift in momentum. Startled, Rowena wonders what business could have brought Arkad to his mother's quarters at such a late hour. The Grand Duchess remains cold, pointedly reminding the young man that he never received permission to enter her room. Arkad steps forward to support Rowena, explaining he came solely because he heard his wife had been summoned. Resting her face in her hand, the blonde woman asks if she is forbidden from calling her daughter-in-law. Arkad stands between them, advising his mother not to push the situation any further while protecting the surprised Rowena. Claiming she needs rest, Archie's protective stance makes Rowena look like an innocent angel in the older woman's eyes. Accepting the interruption, the Grand Duchess dismisses them both, having gained the information she sought for the morning.
As the couple turns to depart, Rowena suddenly stops her husband, asking him to wait for just a moment.
Tiptoeing back toward the sofa, Rowena approaches the formidable blonde woman with a mischievous and playful glint. She leans in close to the seated Duchess, asking for permission to share a private whisper with her. Instead of whispering, Rowena leans in and plants an affectionate, surprising kiss on the Grand Duchess's flushed cheek. The sudden display of warmth leaves the Grand Duchess completely paralyzed with shock as a blushing heat rises. Beaming with pure joy, Rowena offers a radiant smile before heading out, leaving her mother-in-law utterly speechless and stunned. The scene shifts to the Grand Duke's quiet study, where the black-haired man sits absorbed in a thick book. Clad in her elegant purple dress, the Grand Duchess stands at the door, framed by a soft floral aura.
Looking up from his reading, the Duke coolly inquires about the purpose behind her rare and unexpected visit.
She explains she heard the guest room was cleared out, her tone neutral as she gauges her husband's reaction. As she mentions Lady Lork, the Duke notices the lingering blush staining his wife's usually pale, composed face. The Grand Duchess looks away, maintaining a facade of cool indifference while her fingers toy with her chin. The Duke confirms that Lady Bestia is permanently banished from the castle, signaling the end of her influence. Intrigued by the sudden change in status, the blonde woman asks for the reasoning behind such a final decision. He counters by asking why she is suddenly so interested in his affairs, suspecting a hidden motive behind her curiosity. With a mocking smile, she claims her interest only extends to witnessing every bit of his misfortune and unhappiness. The Duke notes that he never realized the Grand Duchess consort cared so much about his personal life. She presses him further, asking why he chose to cut off the mistress in front of the heir and Rowena. A soft chuckle escapes the Duke, his amusement growing at her persistence and the shifting dynamic between them. He leans in close and tilts her chin upward, his intense gaze challenging her composure as he draws nearer. A subtle smirk plays on the Duke's lips as he watches her retreat, clearly intrigued by her sudden, fiery spirit. He mentions word reached him about her barging into his lessons, the news of her boldness spreading quickly. He admits he had simply assumed she had absolutely no interest in him or his actions within the household. Recalling Rowena's earlier advice, the Grand Duchess realizes the girl was exactly right about her husband's hidden nature. A flashback shows Rowena whispering that the Duke is starved for affection and will yield if given attention. Rowena winks playfully with a mischievous aura, while the black-haired Arcid watches her with an expression of complete confusion. The Duke watches his wife, privately acknowledging that the red-haired girl has far more influence than he initially expected. Feeling his intense, lingering gaze, the blonde woman asks why he is staring at her with such an unusual expression. He asks why she laughed, but she simply retorts by questioning if laughter is now a forbidden act. The Duke demands an answer, but she internally dismisses his behavior as that of a petulant and spoiled brat. A crackling energy fills the space between them as they engage in a silent and stubborn battle of wills. Flustered by her bold defiance, the Duke stammers in surprise, his usual cool exterior momentarily shattered. A small, triumphant smile spreads across the Grand Duchess's face, clearly enjoying the sight of her husband being unsettled. She teases him mercilessly, suggesting that his close proximity made her think he was actually hoping for a kiss. The dark-haired Duke looks startled, protesting he meant something else, while the blonde Grand Duchess remains unfazed. The Grand Duchess walks away, her heavy purple skirts rustling as she notes they both despise each other's touch. Smirking with confidence, the blonde Grand Duchess points out that their mutual distaste is common knowledge across the empire.
A silhouette shows the Grand Duchess giving the Duke a mischievous ultimatum: tell the truth or face her unwanted affection. Hovering close, the dark-haired Duke finally yields to the blonde woman's persistent demands for the truth about the study. The scene shifts to a grand dinner where the Duke announces Baron Lork's permanent banishment from the castle. Holding a glass of wine, the Duke sternly advises Arkid to never stay silent if mistreated again. Arkid, the black-haired boy, looks down skeptically, reminding the Duke of his previous command to live like he was dead. The Duke looks away with a somber expression, clarifying that his order didn't mean Arkid should endure physical abuse. A sudden, sharp thud sounds as the Duke stabs a piece of meat, suggesting Arkid should have struck back instead. The Duke explains that dealing with the aftermath of a punch is easier than suffering through one, while Arkid listens. Rowena, the red-haired girl, is shocked by the Duke's aggressive parenting style, worrying about its effect on gentle Arkid. Narration explains that while Arkid resembles his father, he grew up walking on eggshells with a negative outlook on life. A vision of Mabel, the silver-haired female lead, appears, noting she often clashed with Arkid due to his defensive nature. The red-haired Rowena cringes at the memory of the original plot, but finds comfort in knowing things are different now. Arkid and Rowena sit across from each other at the massive dining table, sharing a quiet and formal meal. Later, Rowena spots a maid through the doorway and calls out to her as she leaves the room. Rowena's attention is captured by a beautiful basket of colorful flowers, prompting her to ask about their purpose. 3 cheerful maids explain they are preparing for a local tradition involving the sowing of flower seeds. A sudden gust of wind catches Rowena by surprise as the maids explain it is a flower festival in name only. The blue-haired maid teases the flustered, red-haired Rowena for forgetting a tradition she should already be well aware of. The maids laugh and suggest Rowena was simply too overwhelmed by her arrival as a new bride to remember. They playfully warn Rowena that she cannot run away this time, or the Grand Duchess will surely scold her again. The blue-haired maid asks for reassurance that Rowena won't cause any more trouble for the Grand Duke this time. Rowena reacts with comical outrage while the maids giggle, their lighthearted teasing filling the hallway with laughter. Back in his study, the black-haired Arkid sits alone at his large desk, surrounded by books and documents. Arkid contemplates his new tutors while looking out the window, his thoughts still lingering on recent family events. He questions the sincerity of the Duke's advice to strike back, appearing conflicted by the sudden change in his father. Arkid pauses as he hears a sound from outside, wondering if he just heard Rowena's distinctive laughter nearby. Peeking out the window, he spots the maids and decides he shouldn't eavesdrop on their private conversation with Rowena. A sudden, loud declaration from Rowena that she loves Arkid deeply causes the boy to freeze in utter shock. Arkid's face turns bright red as he covers his mouth, completely overwhelmed by Rowena's unexpected and vocal confession. He recalls how Rowena used to proclaim her hatred for him constantly, making this sudden shift feel surreal. Arkid reflects on Rowena's recent affectionate slips, realizing he actually felt a twinge of disappointment when she used his name formally. Still blushing, the young man wonders why on earth he would feel disappointed by her return to formality. Arkid stands by the window with his hand to his head, deeply confused by the complexity of Rowena's current thoughts. He lets out a weary sigh, still reeling from the memory of her shouting her love for him. Arkid sinks to the floor by the window, unable to process why a girl who claimed to hate him is acting differently. Later, inside a carriage, Arkid expresses his surprise that Rowena asked him for help, as she never wanted it before. The black-haired boy looks away, noting that her sudden reliance on him is a marked departure from her past behavior.
Rowena remembers a disastrous attempt at help from last year, acknowledging her past hostility toward him. Arkid sits silently while Rowena internally wishes she could have showered him with kisses instead of being so mean. He mentions noticing her lips twitching, which prompted his question about her sudden change in attitude. Rowena admits the Grand Duchess can be frightening, but Arkid points out how affectionate she was during their last meeting. Arkid tells her she can't truly grow close to someone if she is only ever afraid of them. He admits he has been on edge lately, remembering how thorny and hostile Rowena used to be toward him. With a radiant smile, Rowena begs Arkid to simply see her as she is now, rather than through her past. Arkid watches her intently, his expression softening as he considers her heartfelt plea for a fresh start. Rowena confirms she wants him to see the person standing before him now, not the angry girl from the past. They share a sincere moment as Rowena apologizes for all the trouble she caused, while Arkid tries to take some blame. Inside the carriage, the red-haired Rowena sits closely beside the black-haired Arkid as they travel together. Rowena gently encourages Arkid to speak his mind, while the boy looks away with a somber, thoughtful expression. Laughing, Rowena takes Arkid's hand and points out that he was actually the one feeling nervous all along. A sudden, sharp thud sounds as the carriage finally arrives at their destination, signaling the end of their journey. Rowena cheerfully asks to begin their outing while continuing to hold a surprised Arkid's hand in hers. The young man gazes at Rowena, his eyes reflecting a quiet and growing sense of wonder at her change. At a garden tea table, the blonde Lady Lork complains bitterly about the Grand Duke's cold and heartless nature. Fuming with quiet rage, Lady Lork grips her teacup while processing her sudden and final dismissal from the castle. Lady Lork defiantly claims she is fine, asserting that the Duke is certainly not the only man in the world. Her companion mentions a troubling rumor that the Grand Duke has already moved on and found a new lover. The women discuss reports of a family carriage heading toward the local seed farm for a romantic visit today. Lady Lork's fury boils over as she recalls their 3-year history, disgusted by his perceived lack of restraint. The brown-haired woman offers a cynical smile, remarking that wandering eyes are simply part of a man's nature. She suggests that even a beautiful woman eventually loses her novelty, and men will always seek a new flower. Unable to contain her anger, Lady Lork stands and abruptly orders her guest to leave the garden immediately. As Lady Lork storms away in a huff, her companion giggles mockingly at the dramatic and bitter display. Mac, the farm manager, warmly welcomes Rowena and Arkid, mentioning they were expected at the seed farm. Tipping his hat, Mac notes that Rowena hasn't visited the grounds since her difficult and memorable trip last year. Rowena looks puzzled by the mention of a previous visit, while Arkid watches her reaction with quiet, focused curiosity. Mac recalls how the Grand Duchess appeared extremely displeased during Rowena's last chaotic attempt to visit the farm. A memory depicts a terrifying Grand Duchess as a snarling wolf, recalling how Rowena had once fled in fear. Brushing off the past, a vibrant Rowena declares she is ready to see everything the farm has to offer. Mac leads the pair toward the fields, noting the particularly lovely colors of this year's blossoming flower crop. Rona's eyes sparkle with excitement as they approach a vibrant landscape filled with many blooming Delis flowers. The group arrives at a vast field overflowing with tall, colorful flowers reaching toward the bright, sunny sky. Basking in the floral beauty, Rowena exclaims how truly magnificent and beautiful the flowers appear in the sunlight. Arkid looks skeptical, reminding Rowena that she previously claimed to absolutely despise these specific Delis flowers. He recalls her cruel command to throw away the flowers he gave her during the last flower festival. Looking sheepish and embarrassed, Ronina apologizes for her past behavior, admitting she was far too harsh back then. The soft smile touches Arkid's face as he expresses relief that she doesn't actually dislike the flowers. Rowena begins to speak about the flowers, but she is suddenly interrupted by a tense and looming presence. Lady Lork storms onto the scene, her expression murderous as she demands to find the Grand Duke. Lady Lork accuses Rowena of using Arkid as a shield, mistaking the red-haired girl for the Duke's new lover. Stepping forward protectively, Arkid calls the woman rude and tells her she has no place being here. With a desperate and crazed look, Lady Lork demands the truth about the Duke's current status and location. Shouting with frantic energy, the blonde woman declares she came specifically to find the Grand Duke right now. Rowena intends to step in, but her vision suddenly blurs as a strange, dizzying sickness overcomes her. Losing her strength, Rowena collapses against Arkid's back, her face pale as she whispers his name in distress.
Arkid catches the limp Rowena in a panic, his voice rising in alarm as she suddenly loses consciousness.
Everything fades into darkness for Rowena, while Arkid desperately begs her to stay awake and hold on. A rhythmic, thundering clop sounds as the carriage races back toward the castle at a frantic pace. Rapid, pounding footsteps echo through the hallway as the group rushes the unconscious girl inside for immediate help. Cradling Rowena in his arms, a terrified Arkid sprints through the castle, shouting for help and her name. The castle staff gasps in shock as they witness the young Arkid desperately carrying the fallen red-haired girl. The castle doctor examines Rowena while Arkid leans in, frantic to hear any news about her condition. With wide, fearful eyes, Arkid shouts for them to help her immediately, his composure completely shattered by panic. Rowena lies deathly still in her bed, the narrator noting that her life was fortunately saved just in time. The doctor credits Arkid's quick thinking, but questions what could have caused such a sudden and dangerous collapse. The physician diagnoses the incident as a severe allergic reaction, shocking the blue-haired maid standing nearby. Upon learning of their trip to the seed farm, the doctor confirms that massive pollen exposure caused the shock. The doctor explains Rowena's weakened immune system while Arkid looks on, guiltily reflecting on her previously flushed cheeks. Arkid asks if Rowena showed similar symptoms last year, but the blue-haired maid hasn't seen them before. While the doctor considers checking charts, the blue-haired maid suddenly remembers Rowena being sick like this last year. The dark blue-haired maid recalls Rowena's red cheeks from last year, noting it seemed much milder back then. Arkid asks if it was when Rowena returned alone from her mother's, which the shocked maid confirms. Arkid realizes the Delis flowers caused her collapse, lamenting that they finally know the truth about her allergy. Arkid criticizes the doctor's failure to perform thorough tests during Rowena's previous, milder allergic reaction last year. Angered, Arkid thinks about the servants' unbelievable incompetence and their indifference toward the young lady's precarious health. Arkid reflects on Rowena hiding her allergy, wondering if she simply wanted to prove herself as a duchess. Arkid feels he should have expected better care for her, acknowledging her important status as his wife. Determined, Arkid declares this matter will not be ignored as he walks away, leaving the doctor stunned. Rowena lies in bed, her red hair spread across the pillow as she slowly begins to wake up.
Rowena sits up and spots Arkid sleeping by her bedside, whispering his name in surprise and confusion.
Watching Arkid sleep, Rowena wonders if the boy actually stayed by her side to nurse her all night. Rowena cheerfully greets the morning, her bright smile lighting up the room as she sees the black-haired Arkid. Arkid bolts awake and frantically asks Rowena if she is feeling well or experiencing any pain anywhere. Rowena reassures Arkid she is fine, though she comically notes how electrifying his face is first thing. Rowena assumes Arkid would never worry about her, while Arkid quietly answers her question with a simple yes. Overjoyed by Arkid's admission of worry, Rowena's imagination runs wild with hearts while she processes his kindness. Arkid notes her lingering fever and shocks Rowena by revealing she has been unconscious for 10 full days.
Arkid looks at Rowena with a gentle expression as he prepares to answer her inquiry about his concern.
Stepping forward, Arkid firmly states that as her husband, he was obviously worried about her near-death experience. Arkid tells her she couldn't possibly understand the weight of his feelings during those 10 days by her side. Arkid looks down, still appearing emotionally shaken by the event, while Rowena speaks his name very softly. Arkid wonders where he could even apologize if things had gone wrong, but Rowena takes his hand. Rowena reminds Arkid that she is right in front of him now, offering reassurance to ease his guilt. Rowena realizes that her own past actions caused Arkid to suffer through so much emotional distress and worry. Still slightly confused, Rowena asks Arkid for the specific reason behind her sudden and dangerous collapse at the farm. Arkid explains the Delis flower allergy, leaving Rowena stunned since those flowers are common throughout the Hadelris territory. Arkid tells her to stop pretending, reminding her of her similar fainting spell from the previous year. Rowena recalls the original story where Archie's late wife hated the flowers so much they were banned. Rowena realizes the severity of the situation and why the past version of herself made such a fuss. Arkid blames himself for not being a reliable husband, while Rowena frantically tries to deny his self-reproach. Rowena looks troubled by his guilt, her blue eyes reflecting her deep concern for Arkid's emotional state. Arkid promises to try his best, a soft smile appearing as he commits to being a better husband. The two sit together in a peaceful moment, the tension finally easing as they find common ground. A trembling Lady Lork sits before the blonde Grand Duchess, her face pale as she faces judgment. The Grand Duchess questions Lady Lork's fear, asking if she isn't happy to see her after the journey. A thought bubble mentions Lady Lork being full of herself, highlighting her previous arrogance toward the children. A memory shows Arkid pleading with his mother to help him, a rare show of his vulnerability. Arkid's memory shows him pleading for Lady Lork to be permanently removed from the Grand Duke's presence. The Grand Duchess condemns Lady Lork for forgetting her place toward the Grand Duke and his wife. With red eyes glowing, the Grand Duchess cold-bloodedly orders Lady Lork's immediate expulsion from the Hadelris territory. Back in the present, Rowena clutches her head in distress, wondering how Arkid could say such heavy things. The maids enter, with the blue-haired maid chiding Rowena for not considering how much they all worried. The brown-haired maid furiously blames the quack doctor for Rowena's reckless behavior, while a chibi Rowena giggles. The brown-haired maid expresses relief that Arkid brought a proper personal physician to look after Rowena. Rowena looks touched and surprised by the depth of care and concern everyone has shown for her health. The maids share a happy moment with Rowena, their warmth and relief filling the sick room with light. Shuri teases the blue-haired maid about her previous complaints, earning a playful demand for silence. The dark-haired Shuri playfully silences her companion while noting the thoroughness of their new personal physician. While the maids discuss the attentive physician Masa, Rowena silently reflects on her own harsh and blunt nature. Considering the upcoming flower festival, Rowena worries about the Grand Duchess's potentially terrible mood following recent events. Shuri and the blonde-haired maid dismiss the tedious task of scattering seeds as a complete and utter hassle. Inspired by Shuri's unromantic dandelion fluff suggestion, a chibi Rowena eagerly adopts it as a brilliant new idea. Declaring her intent to see the Grand Duchess, Rowena leaves while the surprised maids mention the seed farm trip. A carriage arrives at the castle,
catching the brown-haired maid's attention, while Rowena watches with wide-eyed curiosity.
Determined to strike while the iron is hot, Rowena sprints toward her mother-in-law, trailed by the frantic maids. Rowena excitedly shouts for her mother as the blonde Grand Duchess makes a regal entrance into the grand hall. Rowena attempts a warm welcome, but a sudden trip sends her tumbling forward toward the startled Grand Duchess. Letting out a terrified "Ah!" Rowena flies through the air while the maids cry out in shock and alarm. Closing her eyes in dread, Rowena realizes with horror that she is inevitably going to fall onto the floor. The Grand Duchess catches Rowena, who feels like a puppy waiting for its owner amid a field of flowers. Pulling back and looking flustered, Rowena sheepishly asks the Grand Duchess if she has finally returned from her trip. The Grand Duchess coolly questions why Rowena is making such a fuss and what brought her here this time. Rowena excitedly mentions a discussion regarding the flower festival, which the skeptical Grand Duchess had already accurately anticipated. A spread of tea, macarons, and strawberries sits elegantly on the table during their formal afternoon tea session. Sipping her tea, Rowena apologizes for the trouble her allergy caused, prompting a fierce reaction from the Duchess. The Duchess demands to know who spoke of her troubles, but Rowena quickly covers as her mother-in-law dismisses her. Despite being told she would only be a burden, Rowena insists she truly wants to help the Duchess. The Grand Duchess looks intrigued but doubtful as she asks if Rowena actually has a good idea to share. Rowena explains that scattering seeds is seen as a chore, illustrating her point with a vision of an exhausted worker. Gesturing toward the bright sky, Rowena proposes the unusual idea of planting flowers in the heavens instead of the ground. Rowena describes using colorful sky lanterns to scatter rainbow seeds, envisioning a beautiful, memory-filled spectacle for the territory. The Grand Duchess expresses genuine surprise, admitting she didn't realize Rowena cared so deeply for the territory's welfare. Thinking Rowena would want to burn the flowers, the Duchess is amused when Rowena takes offense at being called a brute. Clearing her throat, Rowena explains she is fine with the flowers as long as she avoids the festival grounds. The Grand Duchess notes they cannot ban popular flowers solely for Rowena's sake, but her expression remains thoughtful. Looking genuinely surprised, the red-haired Rowena blinks as she processes the Duchess's unexpected consideration for her feelings. The Grand Duchess promises to discuss the lantern idea with retainers, prompting Rowena to excuse herself for the day. Noting how naturally Rowena calls her mother, the Duchess dismisses her, while Rowena leaves with a cheerful, happy giggle. Closing the heavy doors, Rowena lingers in the hallway, looking deeply contemplative about her interaction with the Grand Duchess. Arkid approaches and asks if Rowena was scolded while visiting the Grand Duchess's bedchamber, appearing somewhat concerned. Waving her hands frantically, a chibi Rowena explains she just wanted to help with the festival preparations. Rowena cheerfully notes that it's exactly the right time for Arkid to head over to the training grounds. Arkid looks suspicious, questioning how she knows his schedule, while Rowena begins to explain his daily routine. Rowena realizes with a start that her knowledge of his habits makes her look like a creepy stalker. Panicked, Rowena quickly claims she only guessed because his current attire looks like fencing practice clothes. With dizzying energy, Rowena denies being a pervert or secretly following him, desperately trying to save her reputation. A soft and warm smile touches Arkid's face as he looks at her, seemingly amused by her frantic explanation. Rowena worries that if she acted on all her impulses, Arkid would be completely horrified by her behavior. Her imagination depicts a shrine-like room filled with Arkid's portraits, where she pays her respects day and night. Peeking through a window at a confused, studious Arkid, Chibi Rowena realizes her inner fangirl tendencies are showing.
Clutching her heart, Rowena vows to keep her overwhelming adoration for Arkid a complete secret from him. Overwhelmed by her own excitement, a tiny purple-haired figure wonders if she should just start a fan cafe.
At the Grand Flower Festival, Rowena asks about the separate children's party while guests mill about in formal attire.
Taking advantage of the rare opportunity, Rowena asks Arkid to escort her, much to his quiet surprise. Rowena and Arkid enter the festival together, holding hands while looking like a perfectly matched and elegant pair. The other guests look on with wide-eyed shock as they witness the two children walking together as a pair. Feeling the weight of many stares, Rowena wonders if everyone is looking because Arkid is acting as her escort. A memory reveals Diana's true nature, contrasted by her outward appearance of bubbly and innocent energy. Splash wipes his face in shock after being suddenly drenched with water from a nearby glass. Diana feigns innocence about slipping while watering flowers, hiding a smirk as Rowena stands beside her. Rowena mockingly comments on Arkid's soaked state, warning him not to embarrass the Grand Duke at the party. Rowena and Diana break into cruel laughter, taking immense pleasure in publicly humiliating the stoic, dark-haired boy.
Arkid calmly accepts the insults, his indifference causing the red-haired Rowena to flinch with a flash of annoyance. With a firm step, Arkid excuses himself from the scene, leaving a frustrated Rowena staring after him. Rowena reflects on her irritation, bothered that her bullying failed to elicit any emotional reaction from Arkid. Snap! In the present, Diana suddenly grabs Rowena's arm, frantically questioning if she is truly doing all right. Diana suspiciously asks if Arkid has discovered a weakness, unable to believe Rowena would genuinely befriend him. With a sharp movement, Rowena forcefully yanks her arm back, shocking the pink-haired girl with her cold rejection. Rowena stares Diana down, pointedly asking if attending a party with her husband is really considered a weakness. Rowena dismisses Diana entirely, ordering her to leave while the pink-haired girl trembles under her icy gaze. Arkid asks Rowena if she's comfortable letting her friend go, but Rowena coldly rejects the notion of friendship. Bathed in a soft glow of roses, Rowena and Arkid share a tender, lingering look of mutual understanding. Arkid stammers a shy apology, making a chibi Rowena squeal internally over how cute he is when flustered. The scene shifts to the other noble guests, who watch the young couple with a mix of curiosity and admiration. Diana catches Arkid alone in the hall, calling him young master with an expression of feigned concern. Diana confronts Arkid, demanding to know what he did to make Rowena act so differently toward her. Arkid laughs off the accusation, suggesting Rowena is simply acting like her true self for once. Arkid admits he only tolerated Diana for Rowena's sake, leaving the pink-haired girl stunned by his bluntness. With a dark smirk, Arkid informs Diana that his wife no longer considers her a friend at all. Diana is paralyzed by fear, realizing this cold and powerful version of Arkid is unlike the boy she knew. Arkid steps closer, exposing Diana's secret sense of superiority and the pleasure she took in looking down on Rowena. Diana's foot slips on the polished floor as she reels back from Arkid's terrifyingly accurate accusations. Crash! Falls to the ground, looking up at Arkid's shadowed, intimidating figure with visible trembling. Arkid grants her a single mercy, ordering her to disappear before his wife arrives and sees her. Rowena enters the corridor, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock as she finds them together. Seeing Rowena, Diana begins to wail, desperately trying to manipulate the situation and play the victim. Rowena ignores Diana and rushes to Arkid's side, frantically asking if the pink-haired girl was bullying him again. Diana claims Arkid pushed her,
But Rowena immediately rejects the lie, defending her husband's character. Diana is aghast, questioning how Rowena can take the side of someone so frightening over her own friend.
Rowena looms over Diana, pointing a finger and coldly asking who she thinks she is to complain.
When Diana desperately appeals to their friendship, Rowena firmly declares that their past bond is officially over.
Rowena cheerfully waves goodbye, telling Diana to stop bothering her husband and to get lost immediately.
Diana's face contorts with helpless rage as she realizes she has been completely cast out of Rowena's life. Diana stomps away in a fury, while a chibi Rowena celebrates their final, satisfying break from her. Rowena turns to Archid, curiously asking what he would have done if she had actually pushed Diana.
Archid trusts her implicitly, stating he knows she isn't the type to harm others without a reason.
Touching her heart, a chibi Rowena regrets not staying by Archid's side to protect him from the encounter.
Archid offers a warm smile, expressing his happiness simply because Rowena stood up for him today.
Rowena is overwhelmed by a cosmic sense of adoration, her heart fluttering at Archid's sincere and gentle words.
Archid softly calls her name, prompting a surprised and delighted reaction from the red-haired Duchess.
Rowena eagerly demands he continue calling her Rowena, finding the name far better than any formal title.
Archid's face glows with affection as he agrees, cementing their new bond as he speaks her name again. The perspective shifts to a peaceful view of the castle grounds through a series of grand windows.
Diana bursts into her home, sobbing and calling for her mother as she flees the festival's humiliation.
Diana cries to a brown-haired woman in teal, accusing Archid and Rowena of bullying her.
The blonde Grand Duchess focuses on her chess game, unfazed as Diana hiccups through her dramatic story. Looking composed, the blonde woman orders water for the frightened child, maintaining her regal and calm authority.
The blonde Grand Duchess focuses on her chess game while asking what prompted the discussion about the young couple.
Countess Reek looks shocked as Diana claims Rowena is tired of playing with her and told her to leave.
Letting out a weary sigh, the Grand Duchess wonders why there is so much fuss over a simple disagreement. A sharp bang sounds as the Countess slams the table, asking if such behavior can simply be overlooked.
The Grand Duchess remains calm, reminding the Countess that she previously stated children often fight and make up.
A dark intensity fills the Duchess as she moves her piece, accusing Countess Reich of being the spoiled one.
The scene shifts as the hem of a blue gown vanishes into a dark, floral-patterned void.
With a final click, the Grand Duchess declares checkmate, leaving the Countess paralyzed with wide-eyed shock. Her heels click rhythmically as the Duchess walks away, dismissing her opponent for being too dull to entertain her. Desperate and flustered, the Countess jumps from her seat and begs her Grace to wait for just a moment. A sharp shatter echoes through the room as a glass falls, leaving the Countess and Diana standing in stunned silence. The Countess snaps in a sudden burst of anger, ordering the sobbing Diana to stop her annoying hiccups immediately. At the party, Rowena observes Diana and worries that her friend's behavior will land her on the Duchess's bad side. Rowena smiles brightly at the shimmering purple gemstones, asking if these are the items that were purchased. Gesturing to the table, Rowena introduces a game called Petra to the curious group of young noble guests.
A green-haired boy scoffingly asks why such a commoner's game would be brought to a high society gathering.
A blonde girl waves off the negativity, excitedly declaring that the new game looks like a lot of fun.
Archid offers to join the match, prompting a cheerful Rowena to suggest an individual three-way competition.
The green-haired boy smirks unpleasantly, suggesting that Archie's knowledge of the game must come from his commoner-like origins. The boy shrugs dismissively, claiming he only mentioned it out of concern for wasting precious gems on commoner hobbies. Rowena gasps in mock surprise, loudly questioning if the young lord is actually daring to mock her family's wealth.
She presses him further, asking if he thinks their finances are so strained that they would fret over small gems.
Her expression turns terrifyingly cold as she accuses him of taking a jab at her husband's background.
Paralyzed by her icy gaze, the green-haired boy stammers a desperate apology while the other guests look on.
Rowena scoffs with a sigh, clarifying that the gems weren't brought just for the sake of the game itself.
A maid wheels in a grand cart laden with ornate red boxes, drawing the attention of everyone in the hall.
A soft click sounds as Rowena opens a box of glowing gems, announcing them as gifts for the guests. Rowena smiles sharply, pointedly telling the rude young lord that someone who hates commoner games surely wouldn't want one. During the match, Rowena laughs confidently as she realizes she is on the verge of winning the round. Arkid notes her surprising skill, while Rowena cheerfully credits her success to being a very quick learner.
A chibi Arkid asks if the maids taught her, and Rowena jokingly accuses them of keeping the fun hidden.
Arkid offers a gentle, sincere smile, expressing how glad he is to see her befriending the estate staff.
Rowena leans in with a playful blush, suggesting she wants to get even closer to Arkid by sharing a bed.
A chibi Rowena looks pleased with herself while Arkid ducks his head, his face turning bright red with embarrassment. One of the guests turns to Rowena, curiously asking if she has visited the ongoing seed sowing festival yet.
The girl describes the breathtaking sight of sky lanterns filled with seeds floating through the air during the event. Another guest marvels at the Hedelis family's impressive artifacts, unaware that the lantern idea was Rowena's own.
Rowena is struck with surprise as she realizes her suggestion was actually implemented and proved helpful to the territory. Noticing her reaction, Arkid looks at her and asks if she would like to attend the festival as well.
Rowena hesitates, reminding him that the flowers she dislikes will be everywhere, making it difficult for her to go.
Arkid smiles warmly, offering to take her to a secret location where they can watch the seeds from afar.
A chibi Arkid wonders if a distant view would suffice, while Rowena looks at him with genuine, wide-eyed wonder.
With a sudden start, Rowena stands up and enthusiastically declares that she would love to go with him. Surrounded by blooming roses, the red-haired Rowena beams with pure joy at the thought of their upcoming secret outing.
The scene shifts to a lavish display of party food, featuring tiered trays of sandwiches, cakes, and macaroons.
In a flashback, the dark-haired Grand Duke asks Rowena if her bulk gemstone purchase means she has a new hobby.
Rowena looks up from her slice of strawberry cake with a confused expression, wondering why he is so curious.
The ducal family gathers for tea as Rowena explains that her bizarre souvenir is actually the game of Petra.
The Grand Duke looks skeptical, remarking that he didn't think commoners would ever have the money to buy gemstones. He suggests she should have used larger stones, teasingly calling her generosity small, while Rowena looks visibly annoyed. Rowena strikes a dramatic pose, playfully preparing to explain the rules of Petra to the skeptical ducal family.
Rowena presents small purple gems, noting that their size is perfect for a child's grip, as Arkid observes quietly.
The Grand Duke looks intrigued, leaning forward to ask how the gemstone game is played, with a curious expression.
With a bright smile, Rowena points to her husband and announces that Arkid will be the one showing them.
Arkid looks surprised while a chibi Rowena pokes him, determined to use the game as a long-overdue family icebreaker.
Rowena suggests a wagered team match, but the blonde Grand Duchess remains indifferent to the idea of playing. Rowena playfully goads the adults, asking if they are simply afraid of the humiliation of losing to a child. The Grand Duke and Duchess become intensely competitive, while a chibi Rowena celebrates their predictable reaction to a challenge. As their carriage travels at sunset, the narrative notes how worked up the adults became over a children's game.
Rowena clenches her fist in travel attire, annoyed by how the couple immediately began gloating after their eventual victory. Inside the carriage, Arkid warmly admits he had fun, as the festive atmosphere clearly helped the family bond. Arkid's face glows with a gentle and sincere smile, surrounded by soft lighting and a halo of blooming flowers. Holding his hand, Rowena smiles brightly and promises that there will be many more moments like this in their future. The couple stands on a hilltop, looking down at a town illuminated by thousands of glowing, floating sky lanterns. Rowena marvels at the breathtaking view, wishing cameras existed to preserve the stunning level of beauty for all eternity. Arkid asks if something is on his face, while Rowena blushes, thinking he is far too smoldering handsome. A wide shot captures the duo alone on the cliffside as lanterns float peacefully around them under the golden sky. The scene shifts as Rowena peeks through a door, wondering why she was summoned so suddenly after the festival. The blonde Grand Duchess dismissively points toward a table, telling Rowena to take what has been left for her. Rowena gasps in total shock as she opens a chest filled to the brim with glittering, solid gold bars. Standing on the balcony, the Grand Duchess explains that the gold is a commission for the seed sky lantern idea. Gold coins rain down as the text describes their system of providing commissions for viable business ideas or plans. Rowena is ecstatic, her eyes wide as she imagines receiving commissions for her future ideas for the rest of her life. The Duchess teases Rowena for her shock, while a chibi Rowena clings to the valuable chest with starry-eyed greed. Hearing there is even more gold in a private vault, Rowena's eyes turn into dollar signs with absolute delight. In his cluttered study, Kobe sighs over a cup of tea, wishing for some quiet time to properly relax. A servant suddenly enters, announcing that a guest from the main castle has arrived specifically to see the researcher. Kobe is baffled by the news, knowing the Grand Duke is away and shouldn't be visiting his remote study. Learning it was the Grand Duchess who requested the meeting, Kobe spits out his tea as a dark shadow looms. Rowena sits across from a nervous Kobe, explaining she came because she has a favor to ask of him. When Rowena mentions his role in manufacturing the lanterns, Kobe looks horrified, fearing he is in deep trouble. Kobe drops to his knees in prostration, shouting that he has committed a sin worthy of death as Rowena panics. Rowena recalls a memory where she furiously yelled at Kobe for burning her hair during an experiment gone wrong. Narrative text questions Kobe's extreme terror as visual shards highlight his lingering fear of the Duchess's former self. Rowena realizes that Kobe is likely traumatized by his memories of the old, volatile version of her former personality. Rowena offers Kobe a single gold bar as he remains kneeling, attempting to appease him with a valuable gift. A comparison shows the scary former Rowena looming over the current, smiling Rowena, highlighting how much she has changed. Kobe looks up with wide, sweating eyes, still clearly on edge despite Rowena's attempt at a gentle approach. Thought bubbles reflect Kobe's internal struggle, wondering if Rowena is asking about his well-being or his survival. Rowena insists Kobe sit down, feeling guilty that her lantern idea caused him to work so much overtime. Rowena is horrified when Kobe casually mentions that this level of extreme overtime is completely normal for him. Kobe explains he is always stuck at the villa and doesn't enjoy going out, living quite comfortably in isolation. Kobe is confused by her interest, while Rowena clenches her fist, noticing the poor state of his work-life balance. Rowena slams the table in a fury, accusing the Grand Duke of being a ruthless and heartless employer. Rowena asks if he works 7 days a week, and Kobe confirms that he rarely gets a day off. Rowena is devastated by the revelation that he only gets 1 day off every 2 weeks, finding it unacceptable.
With tears in her eyes, Rowena tells a bewildered Kobe that he has really had a rough time lately.
Rowena grabs Kobe's pale hands, nagging him to take walks, get sunlight, and make sure he gets enough vitamin D. When Kobe tries to claim he is fine, Rowena points a finger and shouts that his health is clearly suffering. Glowing with a saint-like aura and white wings, Rowena looks determined to rescue the researcher from his overworked life. Overwhelmed with emotion, Kobe weeps and thanks the red-haired Rowena, calling her an absolute angel. Rowena sits amidst blooming flowers, looking bored as rumors circulate about her staging a dramatic protest. Hannah, the maid, offers a warm blanket, but Rowena insists she is fine despite the chilling air.
Rowena jokes that adding any more layers would transform her into a literal snowman instead of a person.
Waving a cheerful goodbye, Rowena tells Hannah to take care as the maid ascends the grand staircase. A heavy door creaks open, prompting Rowena to wonder if the Grand Duke has finally returned home. Instead of the Duke, the dark-haired Arkid enters the room, catching Rowena's immediate attention. Rowena's face lights up as she brightly asks Arkid if his recent sword training went well today.
Standing before her, Arkid asks why she is waiting out in the cold hall alone on the stairs.
A soft touch follows as Arkid gently reaches out to check if Rowena's skin has grown too cold. Arkid looks at her with deep concern, worried that she might catch a cold from staying out here.
When he asks if she was waiting for him, Rowena happily confirms that he was exactly who she wanted.
Surrounded by a halo of flowers, Rowena beams with pure, blushing joy at Arkid's thoughtful and caring presence.
A servant with an eyepiece announces that the Grand Duke is currently unable to enter the castle grounds. Startled by the news, Rowena and Arkid exchange surprised glances as they ask what could have possibly happened.
The servant explains that a sudden volcanic eruption at Frozen Mountain has forced the Duke to stay elsewhere. A chilling wind howls across the snowy landscape, where a volcano smokes ominously near a remote mountain hotel.
The blonde Grand Duchess reads a letter, silently hoping the two children are behaving themselves in her absence.
Her expression turns to one of annoyance, realizing Rowena wrote the letter just to brag about her husband. She imagines Rowena clinging happily to Arkid's arm, laughing together in a garden filled with vibrant pink roses. A sudden click sounds as the door opens, and the Duchess reacts with a sharp look of surprise. The dark-haired Damien enters, prompting the Duchess to question his presence after he promised to keep his distance. Damien accuses her of being heartless, while she retorts that he was the one who stormed out alone.
Damien sighs wearily, running a hand through his hair, as if he had already predicted her cold response.
Standing tall, the Duchess suggests they just admit they are worse than strangers and stop the pretenses entirely. Damien looks at her with a serious gaze, explaining he only left to avoid making her feel uncomfortable. She grabs his tie, pulling him close while accusing him of being the one who truly abandoned her. Haunted by memories of her lonely wedding night, she tells Damien to stop placing the blame on her. Challenging his composure, she boldly asks if they should just go to bed right now to settle things. Taken aback by her forwardness, Damien flinches and steps away, his face etched with visible and awkward shock. The Duchess smiles knowingly, pointing out that his obvious discomfort proves exactly who is feeling uneasy between them. Inside, Rowena watches the heavy snowfall, learning from Hannah that the weather has delayed the family's return. Rowena laughs softly at the mention of spirits, her eyes bright with amusement as she enjoys the snowy view. A sudden knock startles a chibi Rowena as Arkid's voice calls out from the other side of the door.
Rowena leaps up in excitement, shouting that Arkid is welcome to enter her room at any time he wishes. The door swings open wide as Rowena rushes to greet Arkid, who is dressed in heavy winter travel gear.
Arkid stands there looking stoic in his fur-lined coat, while a bewildered chibi Rowena wonders what is happening. Concerned, Rowena asks if everyone is leaving her behind to be the only person left in the castle.
Arkid explains his real intention, revealing he thought she might be feeling cooped up due to the snow. Overjoyed, Rowena shouts that she was indeed getting bored and is more than ready for a snowy outing.
Arkid's face softens into a gentle smile, clearly glad that she is enthusiastic about his sudden and kind offer. The group arrives at a snowy clearing, but the peaceful atmosphere is suddenly interrupted by a surprising discovery. Rowena's excitement vanishes as she stares in horror at the unexpected sight before her, her heart sinking instantly. The field is a literal minefield of hated Delis flowers, causing Arkid to furiously demand an explanation. The servant stammers a desperate apology, claiming the blossoms were definitely not there earlier this same morning. Chibi Rowena panics as a slot machine of doom spins, fearing she is headed for the afterlife from the flowers. Arkid's hand trembles with suppressed rage as he glares at the servant who failed to clear the path.
The servant argues it makes no sense for flowers to grow in a coal mine full of mana stones.
With a terrifyingly cold expression, Arkid promises to hold the man accountable for this disastrous failure very soon.
As they walk away, Rowena notes that the servant looks absolutely crushed by the weight of his own unfairness.
Chibi Rowena sticks her tongue out, stubbornly refusing to feel sympathy since she was the one who almost died. Arkid advises Rowena to stay indoors for her safety, but she questions why she traveled so far just to be cooped up. Arkid hesitates while Rowena notices his concern, realizing she cannot reveal her secret flower allergy just yet. Rowena's Delis flower allergy is classified information because the blossoms symbolize the Hedelris territory. A flashback shows the blonde duchess whispering to a man, while the red-haired Rowena watches them from the hallway.
Rowena covers her nose and mouth with a handkerchief, seemingly reacting to the environment or her hidden allergy.
Rowena gasps in awe at the massive, glittering cluster of high-purity mana stones discovered within the dark cavern.
The brown-haired man explains to a skeptical Arkid that the heavy snow caused the ground to sink, revealing the deposit.
Rowena realizes spirits might be involved and recalls the mine originally belonged to the Grand Duchess. Arkid suspiciously asks if the discovery was hidden intentionally, but the brown-haired man frantically denies any embezzlement. Arkid decides to review the logs for the last 3 months, leaving the man sweating in visible terror.
Arkid firmly states that reviewing records is a standard procedure, holding out his hand to demand the documents.
The man nervously agrees, while Rowena admires Arkid's meticulous and thorough nature from the side. Shimmering crystals fill the scene, as narrative text notes the suspicious nature of such a massive, undiscovered deposit. Rowena gasps as the ground beneath her begins to fragment and glow with a mysterious, intense light. Rowena screams as she feels an invisible force pulling her down into the crumbling, glowing chasm. Arkid cries out in desperation as he watches Rowena fall deep into the abyss of shimmering mana stones. A close-up of Arkid's face captures his absolute terror and distress as he reaches out for her too late. Rowena continues her descent into the blinding light, while Arkid's frantic shout for her echoes through the cavern. In a dark, starry void, mysterious voices debate whether they should help the lost girl or keep her there. Rowena wakes up in a field of Deluce flowers and is immediately horrified by the dangerous surroundings.
A sudden cry of "Ack!" rings out as the panicked Rowena flails about, desperate to escape the field of flowers.
Rowena covers her face,
demanding to know who is there as she hears voices whispering around her. A glowing butterfly speaks to a wary Rowena, correcting her and claiming they are not actually butterflies. A small, pink-haired spirit with butterfly wings joyfully identifies their kind as spirits to the confused girl. The spirit lands on Rowena, curious about her and asking to see her face more clearly. Rowena recoils in fear, explaining she almost died from an allergy to these flowers once before. The spirits explain that manna is derived from Delphina, and Rowena's body absorbed a high-purity amount of it. A green-haired spirit laughs at Rowena's fear, playfully asking if she is currently in any pain. Rowena realizes she feels energized rather than sick, as the spirits explain her body has finally awakened. A pink-haired spirit marvels at Rowena's unique constitution, noting she is overflowing with rich Delphina power. The spirit laughs mischievously, expressing a desire to make a contract and claiming they want her. Rowena questions the contract's benefits, while spirits explain she could use her power to purify contaminated land. Narrative text explains that while land contamination is currently rare, the original story predicts it will start soon. An image of a silver-haired girl and a blonde man represents the prophecy from the original story world. Rowena clutches her ribbon with a determined look, considering the implications of her new spirit powers. Back in the mine, a furious and desperate Arkid lashes out as the search for Rowena yields nothing. A guard urges a distraught Arkid to rest, but the young man is far too distressed to stop. Arkid snaps at the guard, his eyes wide with fear as he considers his wife's life being in danger. Overwhelmed by grief and self-blame, Arkid covers his face with a trembling hand, fearing the worst has happened. Arkid recalls Rowena's recent kindness and warmth, dreading the thought of her disappearing forever. Arkid looks up in sudden, breathless disbelief as a glowing light appears and he sees Rowena approaching. Rowena runs toward Arkid through a blur of white flowers as her light footsteps patter across the ground. Rowena notices how much Arkid is sweating, realizing he has been frantically searching for her for hours. Arkid clutches Rowena's face, his eyes welling with tears as he confesses how terrified he was for her. Rowena beams with happiness, touched by Arkid's deep concern, and relieved to be back by his side. In a chibi scene, Rowena pokes Arkid's cheek to tease him while guards watch their reunion. Rowena sits on a crate, looking small and tired, as Arkid talks with the brown-haired guard nearby. Rowena scolds the spirits for not warning her about the time, as 3 hours have already passed. A spirit teases Rowena about her choice in husbands, noting she clearly cares a lot about good looks. Rowena bickers with a tiny blue spirit, demandingly telling it to release its physical form while it protests. Arkid tells Rowena they should leave the mine immediately, making her ask if something is wrong. Arkid explains that the dangerous flowers at the entrance vanished, making their potential return incredibly unpredictable. Rowena thinks her husband is sharp, as Arkid decides they should head to their lodging. The blonde duchess sits gracefully on a sofa, a small smile appearing as she reads a letter. Narrating the mine's immense potential, the duchess decides the land is too valuable to give to Damien. Damien stands stoically, his dark hair and formal attire contrasting with the floral patterns in the background. Entering the room, Damien informs the duchess they can return to the castle tomorrow once snow is cleared.
The Duchess questions why Damien keeps coming back personally instead of just sending a servant with his messages.
Damien notices her frequent letters, causing the Duchess to flinch as he suspiciously questions their contents. A shocked expression crosses the Duchess's face when Damien bluntly asks if she has found a lover. She scoffs at his inquiry, having expected him to say something far more important or relevant. Challenging his hypocrisy, the Duchess retorts that if he can have affairs, she should be allowed too.
Damien claims he won't interfere with her romances, but she angrily tells him to be quiet. Tap, tap.
Exploding with frustration, the Duchess grabs Damien's tie and shouts that she is not a lecher like him. She physically forces Damien toward the door, telling him to romance whoever he wants to his heart's content.
Declaring she has no interest in romance, the Duchess slams the door shut with a loud bang. Leaning against the door, Damien realizes he was the one who locked it first, calling himself a fool. Chibi Rowena focuses intensely on a letter, determined to understand every detail of the deal being offered.
Rowena flops onto the sofa with a sigh, relieved that he is at least willing to negotiate.
Rowena tells the spirits she needs to prove their existence, while a small pink spirit floats nearby. The spirit refuses to manifest on command, making Rowena point out that it appeared in the mine easily. The spirit explains that ancient summoners had to work in groups to perform powerful purification rituals. Rowena panics and calls the agreement a scam if the spirit cannot do anything without other summoners. The spirit clarifies that since Rowena is the only summoner, she has monopolized all the land's power. Rowena celebrates her immense power, but the spirit warns her never to let anyone know her identity. The pink-haired spirit's expression turns grim as it mentions the dark reason why summoners originally disappeared.
Looking serious and sad, the spirit confesses it never wants to lose its contractor ever again.
Rowena notices the spirit's sudden change in mood, having thought spirits were only focused on eating. Rowena realizes a certain person might be the key to finding the evidence she desperately needs.
A memory shows Henry Connor, who once received a reward for investigating traces of spirits in mines.
Overjoyed, Rowena imagines vast amounts of money pouring in once she proves the spirits exist.
Rowena looks skeptically at a stone with a paw print, asking the spirits if they have anything else. When Rowena calls it a bear paw, the green-haired spirit takes offense and tells her not to compare.
The spirit says the dust is proof, but Rowena demands more glitter to make it look truly convincing.
The green-haired spirit suggests they just materialize and stomp around, much to Rowena's delight. The spirits tell Rowena to stop being so scary while she laughs and says she was only kidding. Dressed in a dark cloak, Rowena stands outside, wondering if the news has reached its target yet. In a dark tavern, Henry Connor drinks despondently, lamenting that he has never even seen a spirit. Henry drinks deeply, vowing to see a spirit before he dies, while someone nearby asks if he's okay.
Henry overhears patrons discussing how the Grand Duke and Duchess closed the mine after she went missing.
Gossip spreads through the tavern that the Duchess was busy finding an artifact while everyone searched for her. Henry's glass shatters with a loud clatter as he hears the artifact is a fossil with a spirit footprint. Heavy footsteps echo through the tavern as a figure approaches the gossiping patrons. Thud, thud. Henry's eyes widen in disbelief as he asks for confirmation about the discovery of a spirit's footprint. Guards at the castle entrance draw their swords as Henry approaches, frantically asking for the Duchess. Henry holds his hands up, identifying himself as Henry Connor and swearing he isn't a suspicious person. Rowena watches with a finger to her chin as Henry explains he has a vital question for her. Rowena recognizes House Connor as Henry asks her about the spirit fossil she recently discovered. Surrounded by sparkles and flowers, Henry looks ecstatic to finally be in the presence of the Duchess. Henry looks horrified as Rowena bluntly asks if his lack of social skills is causing too much trouble. Henry pleads desperately, while Rowena notes he has spent 10 years on spirits but possesses 0 social skills. Henry fumbles to offer money, but Rowena reminds him it is rude to ask favors without providing compensation. Rowena beams with a mischievous, brilliant smile, pointing as she prepares to secure a much better deal. A golden pocket watch with a shimmering rainbow center glows as Chibi Rowena declares her love for it.
Henry promises to show Rowena the spirit fossil as the red-haired girl hums a happy tune while walking ahead.
A tiny mascot with purple hair cries while holding a small creature, shifting the mood with a somber vibe.
Arkid crosses his arms with a suspicious glare, noting he has never even heard of a House Connor.
Sitting together on the sofa, Rowena demands the watch as Arkid watches the nervous Henry with dark skepticism.
Henry explains that the gold watch is not a typical tool for simply telling the time.
The watch rings loudly, prompting Rowena to reveal that actual spirits are currently fluttering around the shocked researcher.
Henry is ecstatic as the spirits appear, explaining the watch contains ground, dried Delris flower powder inside.
A green-haired spirit drools with anticipation, wondering what the powder tastes like while reaching for the watch.
Rowena remarks on Henry's deep devotion to spirits, impressed that he would carry around such a specialized tool. Henry's eyes sparkle as he explains his fascination, believing the enduring spirit myths must have a real basis.
Rowena taps her chin thoughtfully, asking Henry if anything specific has happened at the mine recently.
Arkid describes the strange events at the mine, including Delris flowers that appear and vanish unpredictably. Chibi Rowena panics over ghost rumors, fearing her valuable jackpot mine might be abandoned and lost forever.
Henry stands up abruptly, shouting with absolute conviction that the strange events are definitely not the work of ghosts.
Arkid questions Henry's certainty, while the researcher asks to pose more questions before providing his full answer.
Rowena clasps her hands together, overjoyed by the potential blessing this discovery brings to her house.
The blonde Duchess and dark-haired Damien sit at a tea table, surrounded by a formal and quiet atmosphere. Damien questions the Duchess's interest in a mine that has yielded almost no revenue for ages.
The Duchess shrugs off his concern, mentioning a specific project she has been wanting to start for quite some time.
Damien hesitates as the Duchess offers to buy the mine at market price to ensure he loses nothing. The Duchess looks at Damien, offering the deal as a formal apology for her previous reckless remarks.
Damien admits his regret, acknowledging he said things during their argument that should never have been spoken.
The Duchess insists on finalizing the paperwork today, playfully suggesting Damien might have a sudden change of heart.
Damien walks away from the table, telling the Duchess there is something important she should eventually know.
A deep blush spreads across Damien's face as he reflects on her words, his heart racing with emotion. Alone in his room, Damien realizes that the mystery letter he received was actually sent by her.
Damien asks his butler if there has been any recent word from Arkid or his wife. A breathtaking winter landscape shows snow-capped mountains and grand buildings under a cold, hazy sky.
Rowena looks suspiciously at a letter, realizing it was sent to her directly by the Grand Duke.
The letter's contents reveal the Grand Duke is whining about Rowena not writing to him or visiting lately. Rowena sighs and prepares to write back, deciding to do so solely for Arkid's benefit and well-being. Rowena wonders who is entering her room as the door swings open with a sharp, high-pitched creak. Henry bursts into the room excitedly, asking the surprised Rowena if she knows the news he has brought. Rowena is thrilled to learn they already received a reply regarding the spirit traces sent to the Imperial Palace. A glowing butterfly flutters near a scroll and letter, signaling the rapid progress of their spirit-related investigation. Henry announces that an Imperial delegation is being sent, as anything involving spirits is handled with incredible speed. Chibi Rowena celebrates the news, imagining her pockets getting heavier with the vast wealth they are about to gain. Carts overflowing with shimmering mana stones prove that the spirit's blessing on the mine is truly incredible. Arkid looks at the glowing pocket watch in his hand, marveling at the immense power of the spirit's blessing. Rowena runs toward Arkid through a flurry of petals, stopped in her tracks when the watch rings loudly again. Arkid looks at the watch in his hand with a puzzled expression, wondering if the magical device is broken.
A spirit has broken the watch to lick the Delris powder, claiming it tastes exactly like the actual flowers. Rowena scolds the spirit while Arkid watches, his magical watch now shattered into pieces by the hungry creature. The black-haired boy, Akid, stares in surprise while chibi Rowena gushes over how cute he looks. Henry Connor joyfully holds research papers announcing that the group can finally head back to the castle. Akid asks if Rowena traveled just to see him, and she beams, eager to share her news. Noting the chill, Akid gently cradles Rowena's face and says she should have stayed in the warm hotel. Akid wraps his own scarf around Rowena's neck, making her blush as she notices his comforting scent. Rowena shyly mentions her cold hands, prompting a nearby purple-haired spirit to tease her for making a move. Akid offers a tender, knowing smile as he agrees that the weather is exceptionally cold today. Surrounded by a flurry of petals and light, Akid takes Rowena's hand and asks if they should depart. Rowena stands frozen in shock, her face flushing a deep crimson as the weight of the moment hits. Her heart races in a panicked internal scream, wondering if the young Akid is actually an experienced romantic. A butler and a maid bow formally as the Grand Duke and Duchess arrive home to the castle. The blue-haired maid, Vivian, offers a radiant smile and a warm welcome to the returning masters. Rowena greets Vivian happily, while the maid curiously asks about the official-looking document in her hand. Rowena proudly displays her contract with Henry Connor, whom she has successfully recruited as her trusted new aide. With a mischievous glint in her eyes, Rowena wonders if she should scout even more aides for her household. Inside the parlor, Rowena tells the glasses-wearing Sir Cobestein that he must be exhausted from his long travels. Looking serious, Rowena informs a startled Sir Cobestein that she has something of great importance to discuss. Rowena reveals a shimmering gift certificate, explaining she secured his father's permission for him to take a vacation. Rowena winks while handing over the glowing voucher, urging him to rest well after all his hard work. A close-up reveals the prestigious Along Yale Hotel stay voucher, a luxury item requiring a year-long reservation. The grand 5-star Yale Hotel stands majestically, its opulence far beyond what most could ever afford. Sir Cobestein's companion gapes in disbelief at the voucher, wondering if her eyes are playing tricks on her. Rowena laughs proudly, revealing that the Yale Hotel belongs to her family, granting her exclusive access to vouchers. The companion begs to be smuggled along in a suitcase, but Sir Cobestein flatly refuses the ridiculous request. Rowena points toward a grand carriage she prepared, ensuring Sir Cobestein travels to his vacation in absolute comfort. Sir Cobestein frantically protests the excessive luxury, but Rowena insists he cannot possibly travel such a distance on horseback. Overwhelmed by her generosity,